Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 155 of the Salvaggio and Cratty Sports podcast. Here for you again on a Thursday night, August 17th, 7:51 p.m. It's August 17th, birthday of my best friend, Sean McGrath. So shout out to Sean. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
If he's listening, at any point in time, shout out. We'll be starting with hockey tonight, but before we get into anything, as always, Ryan, how are you feeling tonight?
Feeling pretty good. I'm getting kind of tired of all these retirement announcements, as we'll get to in a second. But other than that, doing okay for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, nothing to be too crazy upset about, but of course,
true or surprised.
David Krejci did retire on Monday. It's just how it is. Something we expected, kind of up in the air a little bit because of the Christmas talk from him, but of course now it comes full circle in the fact that the Christmas talk was him talking about the World Championships, not like a World Championship run, and then maybe he signs with the Bruins somehow. Maybe they make that work with some extra prorated cap space they accrue across the course of the season. But that's not the case. After 16 years as a Boston Bruin, for his whole career, David Krejci has retired. You can technically count last year as a quasi-retirement, but not fully. It's it for Krejci. He's not coming back. I don't think anybody should be holding out hope for that, sadly. 1,032 games played, fifth most in history, behind Bork, Busick, Bergeron, and Sweeney. 455 assists, fifth in Bruins history, behind Bork, Busick, Bergeron, and Orr. He had the ninth most points in history, the third most playoff games played at 160, 43 playoff goals, 85 assists, 128 points. Fun fact, him, Marchand, and Bergeron all have the same amount of playoff points. We'll see how much Marchand separates himself over the course of the remainder of his career. Stanley Cup champion, should have been 3-time, but, can't always get what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Just a consummate professional, much in the vein of Bergeron, not quite like, I think Bergeron is on like a separate pedestal in terms of anybody. That's not even a slight on Krejci. Anybody on the team, I think, would acknowledge that as well and around the league. But he was a quiet leader, a silent assassin on the ice, I think is a perfect way to describe him. He was cold and calculated in everything he does. Kind of Pavel Datsyuk-esque. Like, you don't see a lot of players. You kind of see with Barkov now. They slow the game down. They play methodically. They really think things through. It's like kind of like you see like mathematic equations in their brain as they're like making plays and entering the neutral zone. There are not a lot of players like David Krejci. Two guys, like I said, that come to mind are like Pavel Datsyuk, Alexander Barkov, guys that really slow the game down. That's what makes Krejci so unique to me. I got to be honest, for a few years, when I was like middle school age, I didn't like how slow and like kind of passive he played. But as you grow older and you know more about the game, I think a guy like Krejci is a guy you have to appreciate. You have to appreciate how smart he was, how calculated and meticulous he was with the game. Everything was about precision. Everything was about not about lighting up the score sheet, about doing what was best for the situation they were in on the ice. He's a team guy. He had this very dry sense of humor that I think endeared him to a lot of his teammates. He was an idol to a lot of guys, including, mostly Czech guys. Pastrnak talked about that extensively, Pavel Zacha, and so many players and I think it's so admirable. He talked to Jack Edwards years ago about one of his things about his legacy he wanted to maintain was always being a Bruin, and he did that. It's not like he had these crazy opportunities to leave. To my knowledge, there weren't any scenarios where they were seriously considering about trading him. I don't know, though. Could be wrong. But he was cool, calm, collected. He didn't complain about anything. He was pretty consistently very productive. And just what more can you really ask about a guy? When I was complaining about him at times in the past when I was in middle school, looking back at that now, I feel like an idiot because he really was special. He elevated players around him. He went so long with line mates that were inadequate and still put up points. One year he played with, I think, Bruins Stats or Tucker Boynton on his Boston Sports Info account might have tweeted this out. If not, I apologize whoever did. I think he put like 17 different line combinations one year, and he was point per game in the playoffs and had 73 points in 81 games. He had a very
pretty good.
unique career, a second rounder in 2004, debuted in 06, and it didn't take long for him to get going. Just a kid from the Czech Republic trying to make his way. And once he got comfortable, it was hard to stop him. A dominant playoff performer, ice in his veins, extremely clutch, most notably that Game 7 in 2011 against Tampa. Just an absolutely perfect pass at a crucial time in the most nerve-wracking game of my entire fucking life.
Mm-hmm.
That Game 7, I was legit sweating. It was horrible to watch in some ways, but awesome in the others. Maybe the best hockey game I've ever watched. I could talk about Krejci for an hour nonstop, so I'll stop here. Just what a career. I love the guy. I love the player. I'm happy for him and his family, and I wish him nothing but the best because he's given me so much as a hockey fan, and has really built up the standard of this team that had a great leadership core for a long time.
Yeah, I think just to echo all your points, like you said, I think the way he's being described, you've said it, I've seen people on Twitter say the same thing, the silent assassin type of thing, because that's exactly what he was. I was going to bring up that point. You talk about how great of a career he had, and you go on and mention it, that it seemed like every year this guy, at least until the end of his career, had a new line mate. It seemed like every season or two new line mates going in. So just as you said, as he could be as productive as he was, just having those interchanging parts and never really knowing, who he's going to play with in and out, night in and night out, it seemed like was crazy. That cup run, as you said, if it wasn't for Tim Thomas, like you very easily could have made David Krejci the Conn Smythe winner of that, because you forget how dominant, as you said,
13 too.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you can make the case maybe a better playoff performer. I know obviously we think very highly of Patrice Bergeron, but David Krejci, I feel like, was the guy that like ice in his veins at times when it came to the playoffs. So, like you said, too, very underappreciated. I think when you think of this Bruins core, the run that they've gone on, I feel like he kind of gets swept under the rug a little bit. Like most people obviously think of course, Bergeron first, the Marchand, Chara. People I feel like tend to overlook Krejci. And like you said, that's just kind of the way he went about things. Was a quiet guy, never really let anything get to him. And just another one of the, as you said, a consummate pro. That is going to be missed. But again, like you said, we kind of expected this down the line. I forgot to put the tweet that you showed me. You sent me a couple of days ago. Was it Ty Anderson that had it, or the one?
Oh yeah,
The injections, the injuries. So I guess that kind of shed some more light on some things of why maybe he was a little uncertain of coming back, or why this decision took so long. And again, I think that just goes into the factor, the type of player he was, that you're not going to hear about this. He's just going to go out. And I have a tweet here, like Ty Anderson said, put up a 3-point night in Game 7. So that just type of guy he is, just always seemed to grind things out and, always give the most he could for this team.
Yeah, the one time he ever complained about his line mates was kind of like, hey, I'd like to play with Hall and Pastrnak.
Yeah, exactly.
The Czech Republic. He never complained. Yeah, I mean, there's really not much to dislike about David Krejci. To refer to the tweet you were talking about, he talked in his post-retirement press conference. Patrick Donnelly said he would have required surgery to play another season. He said his body can't take the whole season, which is why he possibly return around the holidays to ramp up for the World Championships. And then Ty, like you said, built on it, said Ty said he had needed some injections to get back on the ice at the end of the Florida series. He opted not to reveal the injury on breakup day, but whether it was pretty brutal. He went out and put a 3-point night in Game 7. That's another thing. His last goal came in his last game, and he put everything out there to win that game. And unfortunately, it's one of those games you just lose in overtime. The cards aligned for Carter Verhaeghe. He put a shot in a perfect spot. And I know for a guy like Jeremy Swayman, it's something that haunts him and motivates him now. So it's crazy to think about. It's going to be the first season officially since 2003 that neither Bergeron or Krejci are on the Bruins.
It's going to be
weird. First since 2006 for Bergeron, Krejci, Chara. If you really want to get into it, include Marchand in there as well. Marchand's still amongst it, though, amongst that year that he was drafted and Chara was signed. So it's crazy, man. Everything we grew up with pretty much is gone.
Yeah, you're starting to I mean, you're even just Boston sports as a whole, you're starting to transition to a new era with all, these old guys retiring. And it's a weird spot to be in right now. Like, it is definitely we talked about it obviously with the Bergeron announcement a couple weeks ago. Like, it is going to be definitely a different, maybe not, totally different looking team, but there's going to be a different feel to this team moving forward, because you obviously do lose two humongous pieces just in the leadership role alone. So obviously we talked about, who's going to take up the C. Now you need another guy to wear the A with Krejci gone. So there's obviously a change of the guard and the leadership position as well. So it'll be interesting to see what the Bruins do in that sense. But as we talked about too, leading up to this, they have plenty of guys in that locker room that can easily step in and fill these roles. But it is going to be weird not seeing, two of the guys that have been here pretty much our whole lives watching the Bruins growing up. It's going to be strange for an adjustment period for sure.
Like, to encapsulate it all, Brady, Gronk, Edelman, Crew, anyone else, Bergeron, Krejci, Chara gone. Paul, I mean, it's been a while since Pearson, Garnett have been gone, but we're in a new era of the Celtics for a little while. The Red Sox, like Pedroia and Ortiz, and obviously Manny was a long time ago. Like, those guys you think of, some of them have been gone longer than others, but guys you think of as like our big time sports figures growing up, they're all gone. Like, this is the future. The future is now. The future's been now for some teams, and it really is crazy. And for the Bruins, it won't sink in for me until I'm at the season opener. I'm really going to see the reception live for Lucic being back, but obviously, outside of being a fan. But this is it. The future is now. The future is here. It'll just be interesting to see how they adapt and how they divvy up the A now, because I think, we talked about in the past, it's going to go to Marchand and McAvoy for the C. We'll see guys like Lucic, Carlo, Grzelcyk, McAvoy, Pasta rotate with the C. Maybe Trent Frederick a little bit, Charlie Coyle, guys like that. But, we still don't have a captaincy announcement. Is there a chance they go with a bunch of A's this year? Maybe, but I doubt it.
I can't imagine that. Yeah.
Yeah, but they promised Morgan Geeky a bigger role. Maybe he gets some time at second line center at times this year. Charlie Coyle's going to need to step up, and Pavel Zacha, a guy that's learned a lot from Krejci and idolized him growing up, will need to step up as well. And anyone else they may bring in at the deadline or before the season's on out. If they can bring in a top center with their cap situation before the season, Evan Gold and Don Sweeney are true masterminds on a level we haven't quite seen yet. And that's not as a slight to them. I mean, getting a top center at this point with their cap structure is practically impossible. But they'd have to be really creative. What comes next is just a new era, like we have in the outline, like we've been talking about. It's a new era, and the first post Krejci and Bergeron move at the center position, which segues us pretty well into the John Farinacci signing. This is a guy I've kind of wondered the past 2 years watching him in Arizona State, like if he's going to sign with Arizona. He didn't, and made quick work of signing with the Bruins. He's familiar with the area as a Harvard kid. I believe he's from Massachusetts as well, but I'll double check that real quick. I like John Farinacci. Like I told you when you texted me, actually he's from New Jersey. I thought he's from Mass.
Close enough.
Yeah, sort of close. He's a Mark McLaughlin type for me. He said he models his game after Patrice Bergeron, which is nice. He's a two-way guy. Pretty good shot on him. He was a third round pick, I believe 76 overall in 2019 of Arizona. Look, I mean, it's depth. The Bruins make good of undrafted free agent depth. This is a no-brainer signing, especially with the cap constraints. If you need to move up and down like certain players or certain guys get injured, it doesn't hurt to have as many guys like this as possible on cheap pennies entry-level contracts. He's making $910K a year for the next 2 years. I like the player. He's not like the exact same guy as Mark McLaughlin, but when I watch the two players over the past few years, I see a lot of similarities. He's got some experience with Team USA at the World Championships last year. He played in the World Juniors for 2 or 3 years. He's a good player. He's one of those guys that falls into that mold. At best, a third line center, maybe a low end third line center, but probably a good, reliable fourth liner, or if not, like a pretty decent AHLer for the most part. It's a guy you can't go wrong on. Like if you have the roster spot, you should sign a guy like him. Some other guys I'm looking at for the Bruins, Boston University's Jay O'Brien, former first rounder in 2018 or 19 of the Flyers, Hingham kid. Could absolutely see them being interested in Jay. give him some AHL time and go from there. Jake Wise played at BU for a little while, went to Ohio State. Kevin Wall, former 6th rounder, I believe, of the Hurricanes, once committed to Merrimack, went to Penn State, transferred, had a pretty decent career there. Another couple other guys I'm watching out for there that I think the Bruins could double dip on one of those guys. But I really like the Farinacci signing. He had 59 points in 78 games, had a little stint in the USHL as well. Also played pretty well. I believe he was just over a point per game there. Wore the captain, wore the C on his sweater last year, 0.77 points per game. I don't think this is really a signing you can have many qualms with.
No, we just talked about it. As you said, it's a transition period. I think this is the time now where you start to make some of these moves, bring some of these young guys in. What's up?
Stockpile.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you need as much depth at the position as you can get. You're never going to hate or bat an eye at too much depth. And again, like I said, it's transition period. Start bringing some of these young guys in, see what you have. And if a couple of them hit, then you end up looking, like you end up looking pretty smart. So I'm fine with it. As I said, I don't know a ton about, or as you mentioned, I don't know a ton about the player, but from what I've heard from you, from what I've seen on Twitter, it seems like it's a move just to get some depth in here, see what the kid can do. And again, like you said, I don't know how, unless you're just a complete stickler in the mud and you're really hung up on Bergeron and Krejci retiring and, the world being over, that it's a move you're going to hate, because I really can't see a reason to do that.
Yeah, I mean, you can't hurt with depth. And another interesting thing to note, like, I don't think Farinacci, and barring a great camp, is going to make the Bruins out of camp, but the Bruins give opportunities to undrafted free agents pretty quickly. So I'd be pretty shocked if Farinacci didn't get NHL games this year, if not carve out a role for himself. Mm-hmm. So watch out for that. I think he's very similar to McLaughlin, hardworking, two-way guy, good shooter. And I think he could be a pro. I think at best, he's probably a pretty good fourth liner in the NHL, but you never know. This is a signing I see no downside to. Other notes around the league. Unfortunately, we had some pretty tough news in the hockey world. Leafs top prospect Rodion Amirov passed away the other day. Just like a brutal story from the start. I feel like it first came out about his condition, about he had a brain tumor about like a year and a half ago. 15th overall pick in 2020, a pretty sensational, elusive, dynamic scoring talent out of Russia. Gone way too soon. Like right as he's trying to, establish himself as an NHLer someday. Tons of talent. Dies from a brain tumor. I believe I saw something from Dan Milstein, his agent, today too. He had 6 months ago lost the ability to walk and something else. It's been really rough for him for a long time. Mm-hmm. And just a talent in the hockey world robbed. Just gutting for the Russian hockey community too. I saw that the KHL had, I don't know if it's just a normal game or some sort of fundraiser they did, but they donated all the proceeds to something either related to Rodion or to brain tumor research, something. I don't have it handy, so apologies for that, but I remember seeing something like that. It was a pretty cool gesture. But just a heartbreaker. A kid with so much talent and potential, just gone way too soon, and just absolutely heartbreaking absolutely heartbreaking fashion. A kid that really had potential to be one of the, especially on a team like the Leafs, imagine him in their top six someday. Could have been a really fantastic player, and to see him go so soon in such a tragic way is horrible.
Yeah, it's for all the same reasons you mentioned, it's tough to see something like that happen. Again, like you said, at such a young age. Excuse me.
Yeah, just a brutal story. We want to send our best to Rodion's family and friends. It's just a horrible situation. May he rest peacefully. Just the absolutely worst type of story to see. Mm-hmm. The Leafs signed their first rounder, Easton Cowan, out of the London Knights today to an entry-level contract. I imagine he'll stay in the OHL this year with London. But, one of the more surprising first-round picks signs an early entry-level deal, so we'll see how he progresses. Caleb Jones, who's not qualified by the Blackhawks, departs from his brother's Blackhawks and goes to the Carolina Hurricanes. Caleb Jones was very good last year on a bad team in a role that he probably wasn't ready for, some thought. So for a savvy team like Carolina with a savvy front office to land him for $775K is super smart, and I got to commend them for that. I think Caleb Jones is a solid player. He's like 25 as well, still pretty young. Pius Suter, one of the bigger free agents, is a domino to drop. He signed the Vancouver Canucks, who were looking for some center depth, and they got it. He signed a 2-year, $3.2 million deal. Good. He was a guy, I believe, went undrafted, signed from Europe a couple years ago. With Chicago, went to Detroit. More of a defensive center, but I mean, if he's a fourth liner, third liner, that's kind of what you're looking for. Him and I think Jack Stanika, old friend, will be manning the 3 and 4 center spots, I imagine, for them for most of the season. I just saw Jack Stanika changed to his old Bruins number from 18 to 23 recently. So Pius Suter joins the mix. They were looking for center depth and they got it. We did have a trade the past week that does, again, another Detroit trade, have some impact on the Bruins potentially. Indirect impact, but you know what I mean. Jeff Petrie, as you know, we wondered maybe he ends up in Dallas. They had interest. He had requested a trade from Montreal like 2 years ago, probably now. So there was some speculation that he wasn't going to stick there after the Carlson trade. So he goes at another 50% retain, which gets him to just under 2.4 million to Detroit, where his dad played for the Tigers. I didn't know. So he's wearing his dad's number 46, Dan Petrie. He'll wear number 46 on the blue line for the Detroit Red Wings, who have undergone a lot of change in that blue line and on the team this year. So interesting to see where they will end up. They sent I think he's like 23, 24 years old, decent young defenseman, Gustav Lindstrom, to a team like Montreal. Like, if you're a team like Montreal, you can get a defenseman that young back. You should. Maybe he thrives there. Maybe he does a little better. And a 2025 conditional fourth. So it'll be the later of wherever the Bruins and the Red Wings 4th round picks end up. So maybe that 2025 fourth, originally intended for Detroit, will end up with Montreal, depending on how things go after next season rather. So decent deal. Jeff Petrie kind of fell off a little bit last year. He's 35, but the metrics are good on him. He's still solid. I think he could do a lot worse than Jeff Petrie at 2.3 million. I think for a team like Detroit, you get a little bit more of a sure thing than Gustav Lindstrom, who's still trying to find his way. I think it's a decent trade. Like I said, I think they could have done a lot worse. And the most recent news, Jonathan Toews officially bids farewell to Chicago as an unrestricted free agent. Doesn't announce his retirement, but will not play this upcoming season. With his health conditions we've talked about in the past, I don't see him coming back. I think this is just kind of like a way for him to say, hey, like, I'm essentially retiring. Thank you, Chicago. But like, I'm not going to completely rule it out. Like, I'm going to think it over. If my health gets better, I don't know what his health is like now. Maybe he considers a comeback. Maybe someone signs him cheap. I mean, I'd still sign Jonathan Toews after a year off. To be honest, if you can get him cheap, he's Jonathan Toews. His game's fallen off and he's a little older, but he's Jonathan Toews. The guy was fantastic in his prime and has won 3 Stanley Cups. Like, let's be real here. But I wish the best to Jonathan Toews. I mean, another guy, speaking of, consummate pros, on the ice at least, Jonathan Toews was a consummate pro and a multiple-time Stanley Cup champion. So for his health, we wish him the best and find some mental clarity there. Any other comments for you before we segue into football on the hockey world?
Not really. The only thing that surprised me about the Toews news today is I just obviously not caught up as much on the story as some other people. Kind of thought he was already just officially retired after last season, not playing. So that kind of struck me as a little surprising. But like you said, I get where obviously with his health concerns he's coming from. It'd be one hell of a story if he takes this year off and is able to come back and play. Maybe give it one last run for Chicago a year from now. Or
no, he won't do that. Yeah,
okay.
He's like, there was some speculation that he could end up in Edmonton this past year. So maybe that's a spot he lands next year. I don't know. To me,
it would make sense just for him kind of right off into the sunset type of thing.
Shit ton.
Absolutely. He's one of those guys you talk about people where it's like, what else do you really have left to play for? Like you've pretty much done everything you can do.
You're already a Hall of Famer.
Exactly. At this point, just kind of look out for yourself and your health moving forward. So don't do anything, to put that in jeopardy. But like you said,
maybe he could show up to random beer leagues like Connor McDavid did and play to like 20%. I don't know if you saw that video today. Can you fucking imagine? Like you play like a pickup basketball game and like LeBron James or
just
Steph Curry
strolls in,
Connor McDavid. Yeah, you're playing pickup baseball and Shohei Ohtani shows up like
just out of nowhere.
Serious. Unbelievable. But we wish the best to Taves. Obviously he's dealt with a lot with his health, so best of luck to him. On to Patriots though. Didn't start off the postseason on the right foot, but it's the postseason, so who really cares? Preseason. Yeah, my mistake.
Jumping the gun quite a bit there. Yeah,
my brain's in preseason mode for football. My biggest takeaway, as you have at the top of the outline, was Keon White's explosive performance. Like we talked about, the kid's a freaking maniac. He's so big for an edge rusher. He's like 6'5", 290. We'll talk about him a little later with Packers joint practices. But my biggest takeaway was Keon White. He was awesome. He was aggressive and just, looked really powerful out there. No rookie jitters. And I imagine you have the same sentiment.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, I caught a little bit of this game before I ended up going to work. Like you said, it was preseason football in full swing, pretty ugly at times. The weather didn't help, but he was, like you said, one of the standouts. Just kind of watching him closely, being one of those high rookies that you look forward to watching. You said it, he was great. Kind of looked like he was, ready to go right from the jump, first play. Had a nice pressure that forced CJ Stroud out of the pocket on the first drive of the game for the Texans, and then also had helped cause a fumble on a pitch play that was a little leaky on the handoff. So he looked like a guy, with his ass on fire right out of the gate, looking like he wanted to prove something, and definitely did. He was, if we did studs and duds for the preseason, which we're not going to do, spoiler alert moving forward, because obviously we don't watch a lot of the preseason games, I think he definitely would have taken the cake as a top guy on the studs list for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just an absolute beast. As you have noted here, Jalen Mills played pretty well, pretty solid. He was active early. He had the pick on CJ Stroud. So if you're keeping in mind trivia questions, who technically was CJ Stroud's first interception, it was Jalen Mills.
Yep.
They'll probably count regular season in that regard, but didn't see anything crazy from Christian Gonzalez, but that's okay. First game, but whatever I watched from him, whether it was in warm-ups of that game or in practices and training camp, his footwork is crazy.
They said that on the broadcast. It's something to keep an eye on.
It's exciting. Like he really is just a master with the footwork. He's a guy that could step up as CB1 pretty soon, but like there's going to be growing pains, and it's not like he stepped into, a team he easily could have torn up as a, stud defensive back, and tore them up. He didn't. Like it's going to take time. He'll progress as things go along, and we'll see how he does in training camp as well. But nothing crazy from Christian Gonzalez, but it was cool to see him, as the shiny new prize first round pick in the Patriots uniform for the first time. We'll see if number 19 lasts. You never know with preseason rookie numbers. We saw Kayshon Boutte have a couple catches. Demario Douglas unfortunately didn't, but I mean, he's been one of the stories of training camp. Pop Douglas, one of the coolest names you'll see out there in the football world. I love it. But I mean, we'll talk about, he's another guy, Boutte, and Douglas, honestly, we'll talk about later, but good to see them. It's always nice to see, especially at the receiver position, it's nice to see like new exciting players. It was once Tyquan Thornton, who's dealt with some injury troubles. Another guy we'll talk about later. It was an explosive day of joint practices today. But Kayshon Boutte and Demario Douglas get their, technical Patriots debuts, but these guys, it's taken a little more to gain steam from Boutte, but he's had some moments recently. And Demario Douglas, arguably the story of training camp.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and there's some discussion and maybe some inside thoughts on why he didn't play. He only played 3 snaps in the first preseason game, but of course, as you mentioned, he's been the camp standard. It seems like every day you hear he's doing something great at camp. Like I said, there's some inside stuff that we'll get into in a second on why that might be. The Boutte thing was kind of discouraging because he was a guy, again, kind of, at least at the start, maybe it was some wrong sources I saw, but I thought at the start of just workouts and stuff, he was really wasn't a guy that was popping all that much. And then he's kind of come on down the stretch a little bit, plays 32 snaps, only had 2 catches on 2 targets. I saw some people kind of get discouraged by that. But if you watch that game and just, whoever it was, a quarterback, whether it was Zappy or Malik Cunningham, who we'll get to in a second, or Trace McSorley, neither of those three guys really had a whole lot of time to throw the ball. So they weren't, obviously the Patriots weren't going to throw the ball downfield a lot. So I'm not going to knock Booty too much for only having 2 catches and 2 targets, because that was one of the storylines for me, from what I saw and then from what I heard on Twitter after the fact. The offensive line and the second-year running backs trying to stand out. Both look like a work in progress. The Patriots, their offensive line consisted of Connor McDermott at left tackle. Is it Antonio Mafi, the left guard, James Ferentz at center, Cody Russi at right guard, and then Sidey So or Sal at right tackle. Play wasn't great. None of the quarterbacks had a lot of time to throw. Zappi was sacked twice, McSorley once. And then for the running backs, maybe it was a product of the makeshift offensive line, but they weren't great either. Pierre Strong had 6 attempts and 21 yards. Kevin Harris had 8 rushes on 10 yards. And then JJ Taylor, 4 rushes, 4 yards. I think JJ Taylor's time in New England, when it gets down to, cut time and stuff like that, especially now with, as we'll get to in a little bit, Ezekiel Elliott's addition, JJ Taylor might not be long for this roster. Some of the other thoughts that you touched on, Jalen Mills, like you said, got to watch a little bit of him at safety where the Patriots move him back to. They talked about it on the broadcast. Obviously important to replace Devin McCourty. Mills stepped in nicely the first game, as you said, had the interception, did a good job reading Stroud. His eyes, he was kind of telegraphing that pass, and Mills stepped in and also had a nice safety blitz on a run that got blown up to end the first quarter. You mentioned Christian Gonzalez. The growing pains are going to come with him. First time they picked on him, he was beating man coverage, but even Zoe went on to say during the broadcast, he's a guy that learns quickly, and he did. He had a nice forced fumble on a punch out. Ball ended up going out of bounds, so obviously the Patriots could not recover that, but had some good technique on that, and then did play 25 snaps. 24 of them came at outside corner, so that's something to keep an eye on as well. Where will the Patriots kind of put him and line him up? And then, like you said, you already mentioned the wide receiver stuff. Any thoughts? I don't know how much of this you've read into the Douglas stuff, because a lot of people seem to think the belief is he didn't play a lot in this game. Again, only 3 snaps. Tommy Curran said this, Mike Giardi said this, both believing that he's already shown enough to the Patriots where they're not going to play him in the preseason a lot. They're going to treat him like a starter because apparently he is going to be, or at least the belief is, he's going to be one of these main receivers in the offense when the regular season starts.
Yeah, I have to imagine that has to be partially the case. And I will say, back to first impressions of the preseason in general, this is the ultimate take it with a grain of salt game.
True.
On the football schedule in general all year. You could be a rookie QB and throw for 10 for 10 for 220 yards and 4 touchdowns. You could show up week 2 and go 2 for 8 with 28 yards and a pick. The ultimate grain of salt game. The lack of Demario Douglas was disappointing because I just wanted to watch him.
Same.
But, if he's really showing out in camp the way it's been reported, there's no need to throw him into the wolves right away and be like, okay, kid, show us what you got. Let him get more comfortable, draw some shit up for the Packers game on Saturday, and feature him a little more and go from there. The kid is giving you more than you probably expected for a 6th-round pick.
Absolutely.
Do what you got to do with him. I trust it. I have no reason to not trust their handling of him so far because, he's a rookie. But I like how they've handled the rookie so far. Boutte, he had a rough start to training camp. It sounded like wasn't really popping, but he's getting a little better. Sidey Sow sounds like learning the tackle position as training camp goes along. So you got to kind of take anything he does with a grain of salt. Jake Andrews, haven't really heard a lot about. Mafi's played guard. Haven't really heard anything crazy from him. But they're rookie offensive linemen. Unless they're taking on your best edge rusher and completely stifling them, you're probably not getting guys.
Yeah. Yep.
Unless they're fucking up, which to my knowledge, they haven't really done it at an extreme level. So another takeaway from this game, Tyquan Thornton.
Best catch of the night.
Been a little bit of a rocky training camp from him. He's dealing with a little injury now after today, but doesn't hopefully sound too major. He made a great catch in this game. That was probably the highlight on offense. But again, it comes back to you're watching guys like Sidey Sow, Cody Russi, Antonio Mafi, younger guys trying to make their claim, and hopefully we'll see guys like Demario Douglas and Kayshon Boutte more, maybe some more involvement in the rushing game. But Malik Cunningham, who you touched on for a second, looked pretty good.
Yeah, everyone's already.
It's easy to make the comparisons mobile quarterback from Louisville. Last time of that, it was Lamar Jackson. it would be hilarious and awesome at the same time if he was the next Lamar Jackson as an undrafted guy instead of a first round pick. But I think Malik Cunningham made a good statement in his first preseason opportunity to be like, hey, keep me as a gadget guy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's quick.
If you ask Patriots,
he's got good vision when he's sees that open space.
Mm-hmm.
Reading back on his time at Louisville until now, and like he showed that. So I don't got any qualms.
You say keep him as a gadget guy. If you were on and really all across Twitter after this game, it seems like every Patriots fan and their mother was ready to write off Zappe Fever last year. And after 1 3-for-4 performance on 19 yards, I mean, what he did on the ground, as you said, the mobile part was the more impressive. But everyone was ready to write Zappe off and make Malik Cunningham the backup quarterback moving forward and make the guy or be the guy to maybe push Mac Jones out. So like you said, it's game 1 of the preseason. So anything that happens, like you said, if a rookie guy pops off, you kind of look at that saying, okay, maybe there's something there. But the first game, especially, you're more so looking at, all right, what are they going to come out with package wise? How's this particular grouping going to look? So really not reading into anything too much, as you said. But like I just found it funny that now 2nd year in a row, the backup is the one that it's got everyone's attention now. And I was like Cunningham craze or something they're trying to coin on social media instead of the Zappe Fever. So look, I'm excited to see what he does moving forward because it was nice to see, that mobility factor in, break some ankles here and there. Had a nice throw. Was it to Trey Nixon? I don't know if you saw that one, the one he dropped in the end zone that probably should have been caught. That was a hell of a throw on the run. So that was something to get excited for. But like you said, not going to get too high, not going to get too low when everything in the first game is definitely looked at as a work in progress type of thing.
Yeah, he's just going to be a fun guy to have around.
Absolutely. Like you said, definitely made a case to keep him on the roster because if you try to move him to the practice squad, I don't think after at least one game, unless he just completely blows up in the preseason last final 2 games, he's a guy that the team is probably going to look at and try to take from your practice squad if you try to put him there.
No, yeah. At this point, yeah. Like they signed D.R. King last year, and D.R. King was a tiny little gadget guy.
Mm-hmm.
Malik Cunningham is a more built version of D.R. King that's bigger and has more to offer. D.R. King was really just brought in for fun, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And, he's got some fun traits. I mean, Malik Cunningham did this, which was, impressive in sample size, but not a huge sample size, and got first team reps the next day.
True.
At training camp. So,
was strictly a quarterback too. They weren't messing around with him at receiver or anything like that. So I think that was pretty telling too.
Yeah, they value this kid a lot. I think I might have talked about it on one of our draft episodes. This was a guy I wanted on the Patriots as an undrafted guy because he was projected to go undrafted by pretty much everybody, and they did. And I think every team that possibly can should strive to sign guys like this every year because you never know what you're going to get.
Yeah,
there's no huge commitment to these guys. Yep. I don't see the downside at all in bringing a guy like this in.
I can't think of one.
We'll see what happens because, at the very least, he's fun and he gives you something to get excited about.
Gives you something to talk about.
And I like that. Yeah, exactly.
Sure, yeah. It's not like Zappe had a bad, that's the thing that I found funny too, is Zappe didn't have a bad performance. 12 for 14, 79 yards. Again, I think a lot of his throws were short yard stuff because that's what the Patriots had to do when, again, you have a makeshift offensive line going. But I can't stress it enough how funny I found that we're right back here again as we were last year, except now it's the backup that's getting thrown under the bus for the 3rd string guy that wants, maybe is nipping at the heels of guys. But again, no quarterback controversies anywhere. As you said, I think you summed it up perfectly. Malik Cunningham's just overall a fun guy to have on the roster because it's something different to look at and makes your offense, if you choose to use them, in any of these type of maybe gadget type of things, like you said, gives the defense something to think about.
Yeah, and when it comes back to the whole quarterback controversy thing, they didn't draft Mac Jones and at 15th overall to not have him start.
True.
A few years later, come on, let's be real when it all comes down to it.
Yep.
Ezekiel Elliott is a New England Patriot, and got to be honest, didn't expect this coming into the offseason, but I mean, at this point, can you really go wrong? You can when you, I guess, compare it to Dalvin Cook, but it seems like for a while now, Dalvin Cook has had his sights set on the Jets or the Dolphins more so than the Patriots. So I'm not super disappointed about the move, but when you get him at worth up to $6 million, given the Patriots cap situation too, you have to do it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
They also spend some of that money to extend Raekwon McMillan, who will be out for the year. So, gives him a nice contract to bounce back on when he's healthy next year. So tightening up a little business there when they're remaining cap space. Look, Zeke Elliott isn't Zeke Elliott of old, but he will take pressure off of Ramondre Stevenson. He gives you an option. He gives you injury assurance if anybody in your backfield gets injured or vice versa. And look, maybe a new system is what Zeke Elliott needs to get back to his old form. I don't see any downside. I really don't. I don't see this guy as an anchor or anything like that.
Yeah, same reasons you said. Obviously, the biggest one is you don't have to hand the ball off as much as you did. And not that it's a bad thing, but you get to dispel Ramondre Stevenson a little bit, give him, a breather here and there more so than you would have if you didn't have a guy like Elliott to back him up. Obviously, a strength to his being is the pass blocking ability. So again, you take some of the wear and tear off Ramondre Stevenson. Hopefully he can last the full season again and play as well as he did last year. Ezekiel Elliott helps that. I just find it funny. I think we talked about it either 2 shows ago or last week's show when I brought up the point or the question of, where's the news of all these guys that you were interested in? And it seems like it's DeAndre Hopkins all over again, where you hear a little bit at the start and then things taper off. Again, take it with a grain of salt with the offensive line situation, but the running backs room did not have a great first preseason game. A couple of days later, the Patriots go out and sign Ezekiel Elliott. So maybe Bill Belichick saw the writing on the wall there saying, okay, well, if we do want to take some of the pressure off Ramondre Stevenson, maybe guys like Strong and Harris aren't there yet. JJ Taylor, like I said, I think you know what he is at this point. He's a nice little here and there type of guy. You bring him up as you said off the practice squad if you got an injury. But you needed some sort of legitimate backup for Ramondre Stevenson for all the reasons you and I mentioned. Ezekiel Elliott gives you that, as you said too. When it's a deal that's worth up to $6 million and you have the cap space, as you said, you'd be stupid not to. And again, change of scenery thing too, as we talk about plenty of times with players. Maybe you get out of Dallas, he gets rejuvenated a little bit here on a 1-year prover type of deal and gives you a little bit more than you maybe expect out of him.
Yeah, Dallas to New England is quite the transition from a media and fan perspective.
Absolutely,
but, maybe this was the plan all along. Honestly, to see how things go in the first week of the preseason, then dip into the market.
Good point.
We saw Darrell Williams also signed. Guys been decently productive with the Chiefs. He signed with the Saints. With Kamara out, they also drafted Kendre Miller and signed Jamal Williams. So we'll see how that backfield looks for the first 3 weeks. Hoping for good things from Kendre Miller. Drafted him in Dynasty. And now it's really in that market down to Kareem Hunt and Leonard Fournette. Who I
can't believe Kareem Hunt doesn't have a deal somewhere yet. It's not a guy that fell off or anything. It's so weird
with him right now because it was oh, he had a good visit with the Saints. He's gonna visit with the sign with the Saints. And that doesn't happen. Oh, the Colts need him on a flight to Indianapolis. Nothing has happened there. It's what's gonna happen with Kareem Hunt? I have no fucking idea. We haven't heard things about Leonard Fournette in a while.
Yeah, that's surprising too. Yep.
Good luck to them in a dead running back market, but you think maybe things with Cook and Elliott ignite the market, but maybe not. And speaking of Cook, he signed a 1-year deal worth up to $8.6 million with the New York Jets. Will keep his number 33. Zeke Elliott will wear my favorite number 15, so I might have to buy a jersey out of respect. And anytime I watch a Patriots game, I'll be feeding myself.
Yep.
Because I mean, say what you want about Zeke Elliott. The feed Zeke thing is awesome.
Yep.
I didn't even care that he was on the Cowboys when he was doing it. The feed Zeke thing was awesome. He was, I believe, doing it at Ohio State as well, where he was electric. But yeah, Dalvin Cook. It's still the Jets. I'm sorry. It's gonna sound like beating a drum here, but they are the Jets.
No, it would be typical Jets to get all these. Again, he was the one that said we're building a super team here. So it would be typical Jets if you bring him in, you bring Aaron Rodgers in, you expect all these guys, maybe second year in or just all these stars to pop off. It'd be so Jets if they fall flat on their face and go 7-9 or whatever, 8-9, whatever the math would be now. Yeah.
I need to see it. They also bitched out of the second day of joint practices today with the Bucs. Are you serious? Are you getting cocky? Are you doing this for
That's
other
exactly
reasons?
what it is.
I don't know what the deal is, but it's stupid. They're joint practices. Anybody should be able to handle joint practices. I don't know why they didn't do it, but it's stupid.
Well, they were one of the ones that had the big fight yesterday, right? Wasn't it 2 or 3 camps?
Everybody's been fighting. Michael Parsons been throwing haymakers. The Patriots were getting in fights. Tyler Biadasz was going at it with someone else, and I think Micah Parsons.
Justin
Apparently.
Tucker, I saw, wanted all the smoke in the Ravens practice. Whoever they fought. You didn't see that?
Mark Andrews threw someone on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Emmanuel Forbes and Devin Duvernay. Like, so much shit.
That time of year, everyone's getting testy. You want the season to start.
I love it.
Yep.
Keon White was in the mix today. He threw someone's helmet in the air.
Can you imagine that
crazy.
Man coming at you pissed off? That's got to be terrifying. I know you're an NFL player. It's probably, the guy's similar to your size, but just looking at him and the fucking monster of a man that he is, you get terrified. Yeah.
There are probably some others we missed, and some details with the Patriots, but a couple scraps today. But my God, it sounds like they lit the Packers the fuck
Sounded like they
today.
Picked on Jair Alexander a ton, which is surprising, but
that Kendrick Bourne, I want to see the Parker catch in the end zone. That Kendrick Bourne play was not only a really good route by Bourne, that was a predictive throw from Mac Jones.
Absolutely, it was a great throw
from Mac. In the breadbasket, which is encouraging to see. They let Jair Alexander up twice. Pop Douglas had 2 touchdowns. There were a couple others, scattered around. Tyquan Thornton unfortunately left with a shoulder injury, but made a 40-yard catch from Mac Jones on a bomb. Keishawn Boutte made a diving catch and hit the gritty. The Patriots had swag today.
Feeling good,
so
absolutely.
That's encouraging.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's the preseason, man. You fight a little bit, you hit the gritty a little bit. I don't know. That's just how it is these days. I love it. I love, it sounded like they didn't have the best first day of joint practices with the Packers and bounced back. I'm very comfortable with this team right now. There's nothing really concerning me in training camp. And one thing I forgot to mention with the Jets too, not so sure about their offensive line. That's what gives me some pause.
Yeah, I've kind of heard similar things.
Coming off an injury. Yep. There's a lot of young guys in that line. Not sold on it yet. I believe they drafted someone fairly early too, whose name is escaping me. They're the Jets until they prove me otherwise, until they make the playoffs.
It is the big thing, real quick. It is the big thing too. It again, it falls back into the typical Jets thing where you said that maybe they're high on themselves. I think that's exactly what it is. It's a young team that sees Aaron Rodgers come in and they're probably sitting there going, all right, season's over. We got Aaron Rodgers. He wanted out of Green Bay. He's going to want to play for us. We can just cakewalk or, coast through this season. We'll be good. And again, I hope they all fall flat on their faces because I don't think that's any way to go into the regular season when like you said, you haven't proven anything yet other than that you are the New York Jets, and time again, you will fall flat on your face.
Yeah. Talent don't always win.
For sure. Especially in that league. Yeah.
We got some young quarterback news. I've got Anthony Richardson named the starter. CJ Stroud trending that way. Actually, I think Stroud and Young. Well, Young's been named the starter, but Stroud's kind of unofficial starter, kind of just waiting for a when, not an if. Brock Purdy, I forget what Shanahan said, but sounds like Brock Purdy's going to be the starter. Trey Lance hasn't had the best camp. Sucks. Another guy I drafted in Dynasty a couple years ago.
You gotta hope he gets traded somewhere to a team that needs a quarterback, and that'll end up working out well for you.
It was funny seeing earlier in the year, Sam Darnold had a couple good days at camp and whatever, and everybody's like, "Ooh, Sam Darnold might be the starter." For
the 49ers,
it just wasn't gonna happen.
Nope.
I don't know, man. The 49ers situation, Richardson, Stroud, Young is status quo. The 49ers situation is so interesting to me because, Brock Purdy proved some things, but you traded up for Trey Lance to 3rd overall.
It's a weird situation.
It hasn't been this, highlight-filled training camp from what we've seen. Obviously we're not there. But part of me thinks if I was Kyle Shanahan and everybody running the show, unless Trey Lance sucked, I'm giving Trey Lance first dibs.
You got to think,
crazy
Brock,
to say that?
Maybe just because of what Purdy did last year, and it got him pretty much. If he was healthy, you could maybe argue have gotten him to the Super Bowl again. You see what happens. Toss of a coin against that Philadelphia team. But I think I think
Phillip Rivers if he got to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that was a crazy story that came out. That would have been something to see.
Story real quick that feels fake. That I
cannot
believe that it was even pondered. I can't even believe that was pondered. That is,
I don't know how you would be
insane.
able to get a guy that's been sitting on his couch all year up to Super Bowl at level speed in 2 weeks.
On kid number 10, potentially number 11.
That's true too. Yeah. Yep.
No, there are people out there that legitimately believe if Phillip Rivers started in the Super Bowl, if the 49ers the 49ers would have won the Super Bowl. No fucking chance.
They would have won it on their defense.
By 30 points.
They would have needed their defense to step up like Tampa's did against Kansas City. There's no way Phillip Rivers would have been able to get into a shootout with Mahomes if that's what it came down to. That's idiotic.
Zero. I would have bet $1,000 on the Chiefs to win that game if Phillip Rivers was starting.
Mm-hmm.
There's a -% chance they would have won the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. Like,
it would have been wild to see. I'll say that, but no, on the Purdy thing too.
Like, hilarious. It would have been like something like people make the jokes like, "Oh, like we're in like a simulation." Like that would have been a simulation game.
Absolutely.
Like that would have made me question my space in the universe.
Yeah, for sure. The only thing I was gonna say about Brock Purdy really quick is, I mean, you got to feel bad for the guy almost for the reason you just mentioned. At some point, if you're the Niners, you have to see what you have in Trey Lance. So I feel like Brock Purdy, more than any quarterback maybe going into the season, is going to have a target on his back. Like the first game, he has a 2-interception performance or doesn't come out and play well. I feel like they're going to pull the plug on him because, again, you have to see what you have in Lance at some point. So I don't know how the 49ers are going to do it. Like I said, that's probably the way they'll go is they'll make Brock Purdy the scapegoat if he has one bad game, and then that just will give Kyle Shanahan all the. I do too, because I mean, like I said, he was enjoyable to watch last year. He stepped in and performed really well for that team, so you're rooting for the guy. But again, like you said, it's such a weird situation where you have this guy that you traded all this draft capital for. To not play him would be, criminal for your franchise and not be the smartest thing. So maybe I don't know how they're going to do it. Maybe they'll, throw. I don't even want to say like half game things. So that's just dumb to say, but it is definitely a weird situation. But I think you're definitely going to see both quarterbacks at some point this year for the 49ers.
No, yeah. And like, I wonder if they kind of go on like a game by game basis.
Maybe like a matchup thing, which quarterback style is better. Like, I don't know how to, it's such a bizarre situation where you have two quarterbacks that could very easily be starting and, two that probably should be starting.
It's like one of those situations where like, I don't envy them because they have to ideally pick one for the long run.
Mm-hmm.
But you kind of do because like, if one of them stinks a little bit, you have, if it's Purdy first, you have a kid that you traded up 3rd overall to, and like you have some belief in. But man, it's one of those things where like if Trey Lance ends up getting traded and he blows up and just goes off somewhere else, it's one of those trades that it's just gonna be hilarious to look back at. But that is really one of the, we'll talk about this more, as like the offseason progresses, and like we'll talk about like big storylines as we preview the season and stuff. Right now, that might be outside of like Aaron Rodgers, of course. My biggest storyline going into this year,
the 49ers situation,
is how the QB room looks, because I think Sam Darnold's kind of just there. He's like
absolutely he's there if they
lose in
case
of emergency.
Yep, he's there if they just freak injury lose both quarterbacks again.
Yeah, and as much as he has sucked for most of his career, veteran presence type of thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
But any other notes on the NFL before we segue into some basketball stuff?
Not really.
Kristaps Porzingis, we talked about him a little bit recently. He's been diagnosed with plantar fasciitis in his right foot.
What's the panic level right now?
Rehab. I'm kind of panicking.
Are you?
I am only panicking a little bit because of his injury history.
Exactly.
Plantar fasciitis. I have some sort
as
of
you know,
some plantar fasciitis diagnosed by my aunt who has it. I have something similar to it. I don't imagine it's anywhere close to the level of Porzingis. I can remedy it pretty quickly when it acts up, but it is something, in talking to my aunt who has had it for a little while now, is pretty uncomfortable. It's not like a broken bone or anything, obviously, but like it's legit uncomfortable. And basketball, you're on your feet, you're these big dudes who carry these big frames thudding across the court, it's going to get uncomfortable, especially for a guy who's had quite a bit of injury history and not a super long career so far. It worries me. Like 4 to 6 weeks, not too long before the season. It worries me. It worries me about it lingering. And yeah, like comes, it's not the same situation as Gallinari last year, but like it comes around this World Cup time. We saw how it affected Gallinari, of course, much more severe. But this time of year, if injuries pop up, I'm just naturally going to be worried when it comes to, the Celtics in basketball.
Yeah,
I'm worried right now. I am.
I'm with you on that because this is an injury. Like it's a weird one because it affects guys differently, as you said. I mean, it's something that's probably going to linger. I'm glad they nipped it in the bud or tried to as early as they could. Now the question is, did Porzingis make the decision himself? Because he was the one that tweeted it out. That basically he said that, I have this. I'm dealing with this injury. I'm not going to play. So that led some people to, maybe question, well, is Porzingis calling the shots here? Did he make the decision? Did Team Latvia tell him that, sorry, you're not going to play, or the Celtics get out in front and be like, hey, you're not, as we talked about a couple weeks ago, you and I both said the same thing. We don't want you playing in this. We're the Boston Celtics. We're the one paying you the contract. We just gave you this extension.
Traded for you.
We just we gave up a decent haul to trade for you. We pissed some of the fan base off doing so. I don't know if the Celtics really care about that or not, but you get where I'm coming from. There's that to factor in as well. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm curious to see who was the one that pulled the plug on this. Was it Porzingis? Because I feel like you never really see, and some people have kind of, again, maybe conspiracy theories a little bit. I feel like you don't tend to see the player themselves come out on social media and be like, yeah, I'm dealing with this. It's usually the team that is like, this player has this injury, they're going to miss this time. And then, of course, with the Celtics, as we've seen in the past, they've been criticized in the media before for maybe underplaying the injuries that their players have had. You think of the Kyrie Irving injury a couple years back. Of course, Rob Williams, whenever the timetables come out with him, he always seems to miss a little bit more time. Kemba Walker, same thing, his knee injury, they kind of downplayed that. Now Kemba Walker isn't even in the league anymore. So there is that factor as well. The Celtics maybe might not be the most trustworthy source when it comes to their 4 to 6 week program. Now there was the comment from The Athletic that said the Celtics are not overly concerned over Kristaps Porzingis' foot injury, although the 7'3" sharpshooter indicated he is not fully ready for competition at this point, determined it was necessary to continue the recovery process. A Celtics source reached later Tuesday downplayed any concern over the issue. So I'm with you. I'm concerned. Again, it is an injury that lingers. It's different cases have affected different guys. If people remember back to last offseason, Joel Embiid, he was apparently affected by it during his conditioning in the offseason, and that led to his slow start. Of course, obviously went on to win MVP. So I feel like that's an injury that kind of lessened as the season went on for him. What's up?
Porzingis is going to win MVP.
Maybe, yeah. They got out early in front of it now. So maybe you're looking at a big year from Kristaps Porzingis. But then in other cases, you have Yusuf Nurkic, the Trailblazers. He dealt with it last year, missed right around the 4-ish weeks, 14 games during the season. And then back in the 2021-2022 season, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander of the Oklahoma City Thunder, he had his season cut short by it. He got it in March. Due to a significant tear. Now, obviously, I don't think Porzingis is dealing with the same type of tear or anything like that. But again, something to keep an eye on. The injury to Gilgeous-Alexander, he missed 11 of the final 12 games of the season. So definitely an injury that lingers.
Of course, for me, I don't have diagnosed plantar fasciitis, but I have some sort of version. When it does flare up and I walk around sometimes,
you said it's like noticeable.
It's going to tear. It feels like it's going to tear, and I get worried. So I have to kind of walk like a little goofy.
Hobble on it. Yeah. Yep.
For guys like this, bigger gentlemen who play professional basketball and weigh a lot more than me and are a lot taller, I can't even imagine. And, of course, there are a lot of people out there that have much more severe, symptoms of it and pain. It's nothing to be fucked around with. Like you can kind of downplay it, on the surface level by like, oh, it's not a broken bone or anything or a tear. It can be a tear, but it's a nuisance. Like, as far as I know from my experience personally, and hearing about it, it's a nuisance. It's annoying, and it limits you. Like, I can't even imagine how I'd play sports if I had it on a much more severe level.
It's got to be tough, you think, to play through it for sure. But
because it really does, when you walk, sometimes it feels like it could just tear at any moment if you walk the wrong way. It's very bizarre and cumbersome, but luckily for me, I hope it doesn't get any worse, and it's easily remedied. So I wish the best for Porzingis because it's a nuisance.
Absolutely. And it's a weird situation too, because I don't know if you've seen on social media, like these reports, obviously when the first reports came out about him dealing with at the time what was known as just a foot injury, Then there was always the reports from Latvia, from Porzingis himself, that he wasn't hurt. He was, obviously working out fine, was posting videos of him dunking and shooting the ball. So it's like, okay, if he's doing that, the injury can't be that severe. But again, as you said right at the top of this, with the guy's injury history, with the history of players and how they dealt with it, you yourself just talking about, maybe a minor case of it, but still the pain and the discomfort for it. Like, this is something that's you're gonna have to monitor throughout the offseason. If I'm the Celtics, I'm wrapping this guy up in bubble wrap is the first chance I get. Because I don't think it's too crazy. Maybe it is to say he at least to me is the second most important player on this team this year. Like, yes, the Celtics will probably get by if Jason Tatum, ascends to another level this year. Jaylen Brown bounces back, has the season that we expect him to. But like, again, you gave up a pretty important piece of your core to get Porzingis here. Like, if he goes down, you're already kind of thin in the front court with, Horford aging, Rob Williams' injury concerns. Grant Williams, of course, is gone, so you don't have that presence either to fall back on. This is a guy you're going to need throughout the season. He is looked at as now your third superstar, a guy that's probably it's looked at to open the floor up for Tatum and Brown and give you more scoring options. You have to do everything you can to keep this guy healthy and ready to go. If that means maybe missing the first couple of games of the season just to be on the safe side, I don't think that's something that the Celtics should overlook either.
Yeah, Tungus Pingus, keep him healthy.
Absolutely.
Like, especially now.
Mm-hmm.
James Harden. I know people aren't going to be able to believe this, but James Harden is causing
He's at it again. Yep.
Was this a youth camp he made this announcement?
I don't know what I thought it was, but then I looked at the video, and then of course the subsequent videos that came out of him either selling wine or buying wine. I think he's just over in China doing, like, I don't know if it's a press tour type of thing or something with maybe, like, I don't know, his apparel or whatever it was. He's over in China doing something. And this is where this little outburst about 76ers owner, same, numbers and stuff. Daryl Morey calling him a liar, saying he'll never play for him again. Like, it's just James Harden wanting out of another situation and doing whatever he can to try to. That's coming 100%. All the memes have already
commented on that. How it got.
That was fired. Hilarious. Yep.
I hope he gets that so bad.
He's going to, because that was the other report too, that I think Ramona Shelburne had it. Yeah, ESPN. She commented, had a tweet saying, somebody said to me yesterday, this is only the beginning. This is just the beginning of what James Harden is going to do to make life very uncomfortable for the Philadelphia 76ers going into training camp. Woj also had a similar report and tweet on that saying, James Harden's goal is to make the Sixers so uncomfortable that they decide they cannot bring him back. I don't know if you saw it today. He also had, I don't know what he was on, if it was just he tweeted it himself or had some sort of comments talking about how he wants to play in China because the fans are always so great to him over there. So maybe he's considering, if the Sixers don't want to, feed into what he wants, moving over and playing somewhere overseas, which in that case, good riddance to you, because I don't want to hear about you anymore. But James Harden is apparently, like you said, he is going to do something, it seems, that makes the 76ers. The other report too was Daryl Morey was quote unquote unmoved by James Harden's comments and still plans to keep him. So good for him, standing pat, not again feeding into this crybaby prima donna that we've seen do this now. What are we up to? 3 or 4 times, blowing his way out of Houston, Brooklyn, now Philadelphia.
Dude, like, at this point, just trade him back to fucking Houston and let him.
If you're a team though, what would you realistically want to give up for? Because I thought I saw a report that the Sixers still want a young player and like a draft pick.
I think he just wants to go to somewhere that has good strip clubs, and
probably
he doesn't give a fuck about winning.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just trade him to Houston. Apparently, Houston has these awesome strip clubs. Like, Kevin McHale isn't there anymore. Like, they're not really playing for anything unless they prove us different.
I can't imagine him and Ime button heads though. That would be something to watch.
Dude, I don't know how, if you're Daryl Morey, and is Sam Hinkie still the GM there?
I am not 100% sure.
I don't know. Just train him for anything. Like, I would be at a point if I'm the Sixers, like, if you're gonna do this, like, if it's gonna drag out like you say it is, and I would believe James Harden in a situation like this, if he's gonna drag it out like this, just get rid of him. Like, seriously, you have enough culture issues with this Joel Embiid shit happening too, and trying to, the process finally.
Do you think he did that on his own though, or do you think he saw the Harden thing and was like, all right, it's time to jump? Because I think the 2 and 2 go hand in hand, because obviously this happened, him removing all of his Philadelphia 76 or his processing comment, and then remove Philadelphia from his Twitter bio. Again, read into that what you will. I think those two things go hand in hand.
From all we've heard this offseason, and if they trade James Harden, they're going to be at least somewhat marginally worse.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see Joel Embiid on the 76ers by like 2025.
No, long term, he's gonna
there
bail.
Just seems like no way. It seems like he's passive aggressive towards them. He's not fully committed. I understand why.
Yep.
The 76ers like truly need some sort of ritual performed in them because
they do. They need some sort of culture shock to save their lives. And again, you say the Harden thing, just ship him out of there. I don't know if I'm a team. I don't know at this point who the hell would want to require James Harden, because you got to be in the front office sitting there going, okay, we're going to bring this guy in. He probably, he might not want to play for us. What's to say in a year or two? Again, this is all over contract stuff too. So James Harden, I think, is a free agent at the end of the year, because that was kind of the thing a lot of people believe is he's doing this because he didn't get that or was never offered a contract extension from the 76ers. If I'm the 76ers and I'm Daryl Morey, good on them for doing that, because why would you want to give this guy a lot of term if he's going to pull crap like this?
Yeah.
So,
hey, look at the Kyrie situation. Kyrie was a shit bum all year, causing shit.
That's true.
He got a 3-year, $126 million deal. James Harden can do the same thing next summer.
It's the NBA.
Harden,
that's what happens.
At this rate with how the NBA goes, somebody could get him just because Daryl Morey's so pissed off for like 2 second-round picks and benefit.
True. Just get out of here. Get out of my face.
If you're a team like the Rockets, why not? As long as he's cool going back and ownership is at this point, all these years later, I cannot fathom a situation where any somewhat contending team trades for him.
No chance. Unless again you're like
you.
Look, I'm trying to think like for the Lakers couldn't make it work, but something like that. But
the Lakers would be classic if he goes to the Lakers. LeBron, AD, and Harden would be hilarious to see how that pans out.
It would absolutely be another big three with a lot of egos that you have to try to.
They would just have to trade for Westbrook back and fucking have that pop off. My God, this guy is truly insufferable in so many ways. It just makes me think back to the point where we were once pondering trading one Jaylen Brown
for him,
and I told you on this podcast multiple times I would have renounced my fandom to the Boston Celtics if they did that, especially now. Jaylen Brown, known as one of the more overpaid guys in the league now. My God, I would take Jaylen Brown
over.
I would take Jaylen Brown at any time in his career and in the future over James Harden in any lifetime.
I don't think I disagree with you at this point in time, but that was the funny thing too. I was going to mention is there's a couple of stupid accounts that are fully serious of, well, if you're the Celtics, would you trade for James Harden? And then they go on a list like, would you trade for whatever he had last year, 21 points per game, I think, and 6 assists, and they only factor those two things in.
Sell it to idiots on Twitter.
That's what I mean.
Look at all these pretty stats.
Yeah, look at he shot this percent, guys. Also factor in that he just completely disappeared in the playoffs and is a loser. And now again, he probably doesn't want to play for the Celtics, so he blows his way out of here too. Yep, he's got the fat suit waiting in the closet, ready to go for the start of 76ers training camp.
I just picture him like Ben Stiller's character in Dodgeball. He just gets really fat at the end. The piles of fries and all that shit. That's just James Harden whenever he wants to get fat. Dude, I at this point, I hate the guy so much. It would just be really funny if he got fat and showed.
I'm curious to see what he does. All these
for the Sixers, really fat.
Yeah, again. I'm curious to see what they mean when Ramona Shelburne and Woj say that he's going to make the 76ers uncomfortable. This guy has done almost everything in the book you can to shoot your way out of a team, unless he wants to go
get fat and sit on Daryl Morey and actually make him uncomfortable.
Yeah. That's a good way to think of the wanting to play for China is a new one though. I've never seen a player currently in the NBA openly come out and say that he wouldn't oppose going over there and playing. So that is definitely maybe that's the route he takes. Hey, get me a visa, whatever it takes to get over there and play overseas.
Wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, because
it's the get ready to learn Chinese Adam Silver meme.
Yep, that was one of the ones that it came out. I saw the other day that get ready to learn Chinese. But dude, he probably wouldn't be opposed to it if he really doesn't want to play for the Sixers that bad.
I got to be honest. He played in China. He'd put up 80 points a game.
Oh, he would dominate for sure. And they would love him over there. He would never cry about anything because it would just be constant praise because he doesn't have to work for anything really over there. And
he'd have to vet the local strip clubs though, because apparently that's important to him.
Very true.
I think that's going to wrap it up for us though for tonight. A nice Thursday episode. We might be changing up the schedule at some point in the future, so keep an eye out for that on Twitter. Occasionally, we're going to have to do Thursday shows, and we might, change our regular recording dates. So keep an eye out for that. I will say ahead of time, August 30th, we're planning on doing a show the next day because I will be at my uncle's wedding rehearsal, so I will not be around that night. I will be in Charlestown, Massachusetts, nowhere near my laptop or recording equipment. So
and I've got a very less important fantasy football draft to attend to. So
it's true too. Frees you up for that. It'll work. It works out. Sometimes you just got to do what you got to do, especially in the summertime. So thank you so much, everybody, for listening. The listenership's been really awesome lately, so we really appreciate it, new and old. You can find us wherever you find your podcast. You can rate and review on Apple and Spotify. And you can find us on YouTube and Twitch as well on the Full Press Coverage pages. Please subscribe and follow there. You won't regret it. You can find us on Twitter at Mike_Cratty, at Ryan_Salvaggio. You can find the show at Sound Cratty Pod. You can also throw our name into the search bar and find us on TikTok. We'll see you next week, whenever that may be. We'll keep you posted on Twitter and stuff. But it'll be around mid next week. Stay safe, stay healthy, be nice people, all that good stuff. And we'll talk to you then. Peace out.